big story in world sport, though, this morning, Nathan, is Tiger Woods being involved in a single car collision yesterday, and he's just not in a good way, to put it simply, this morning. What do we now know after the last couple of hours?
Well, we know that the injuries from a career point of view are career-threatening. Thankfully, though, from his personal point of view, they are not life-threatening, because when this news started to flow in just after tea time yesterday, it was one of those moments where your heart sinks and there's a real fear as the pictures come through as to just how serious this could be. And as much as we have looked at Tiger as this superhuman sportsman over the last quarter of a century, first and foremost, now more than ever, he is a family man. We've seen in recent months that connection he has with his son, Charlie, when they were playing at the father and son tournament. And like Tiger's future, a large part of it was on the golf course in the coming years, but probably as caddy to his son. And you can see the joy that brought the two of them over the last few weeks. So the first thought is that he has two young children who he needs to be there for. And thankfully, the news that we're getting this morning is that while these injuries are extremely serious, that he is still alive and is going to be able to recover from this. From his career point of view, like, we're talking about open fractures in his right leg. This statement has come out in the last 90 minutes or so. It was a long surgery, broken bone in at least two places, severe ankle injuries. And that's not even getting into what the issues could be with his back, because even before this incident happened, there were major concerns about Tiger's future. He underwent back surgery for a fifth time over Christmas. He was on the television on Sunday night, and he didn't seem in any way convincing that he'd be back in time for the Masters. And he's 45 years of age now. It was already looking highly unlikely that he would be able to come back and win another major. Since winning the Masters in such incredible fashion in 2019, he's won one tournament since, but he's never quite looked as fit or as agile or quite as confident as he did on that Sunday at Augusta. So this is an incredibly serious and sad incident. But having watched the press conference last night with the chief of police and the chief of the fire department and the first responder who was there onto the scene in California, they mentioned several times that he is very, very lucky to be alive.
Yeah, that first responder was Deputy Carlos Gonzalez. He spoke at last night's Los Angeles Sheriff Department's press conference.
When I arrived on the scene, Mr. Woods was seated in the driver's seat. I made contact with him, and I ensured that he was able to speak to me. At that time, he seemed that as though he was still calm and lucid. I made the determination that it would be safer to wait for LA County Fire to help remove him instead of trying to remove him myself. I kept Mr. Woods calm until LA County Fire arrived on scene.
What did you do to keep him calm, Deputy?
I spoke to him. I asked.
Conversation. Could you share it with us, please?
I asked him what his name was. He told me his name was Tiger, and at that moment, I immediately recognized him. I asked him if he knew where he was, what time of day, just to make sure he was oriented. He seemed as though he was lucid and calm.
Was he concerned about his injuries?
He didn't seem concerned of his injuries at the time, which is not uncommon in traffic collisions. Many times people tend to be in shock. It's a traumatic experience, so it's not uncommon for people to be focused on unimportant things, or even if they are in pain, they may not feel it until much later.
You listen to that, Nathan, and as you say, you look at the images on top of that, and it just paints this unbelievably grim picture that, yes, the main sports headline this morning is that Tiger Woods has sustained career-threatening injuries, but really the headline is that he has avoided life-threatening injuries, because that looked like an absolute disaster down there, and you can hear from the tone even of the first responder there that was certainly the case.
It was a remarkable only in America style press conference outside the police station last night, where the chief of police and the head of the fire department spoke for about 25 minutes to hundreds of reporters and went into quite a bit of detail about exactly what happened, what they suspect happened, that Tiger was coming down a steep decline. He clearly lost control of the car in an area that is known for speeding, and he hit a curb, went across the central median, hit a sign, a road sign while he was going across that, then went across 2 lanes of oncoming traffic where, incredibly, even at rush hour, first thing in the morning in LA, there was no oncoming traffic, cut straight through a tree, went through several rollovers, and was laying prone as a neighbor in a house overlooking, spotted this accident, rings the first responders, and they get there within 10 minutes and are able to remove and extricate Tiger from the car. We had all this detail, and it was getting incredibly personal. Some of the questions as to, who he asked for when he was in the car, and the chief of police didn't have the answers, turned around and said, well, actually, the first responder is right here. Why doesn't he come up to talk to you? And Carlos Gonzalez, who you just heard from, this incredibly well-spoken young man in 2 different languages, went through pretty much minute by minute what had happened. And it just came up again and again that he was lucky to be alive, that he was driving a Genesis vehicle. So he was in LA because he was the host of the Genesis Invitational and was, it seems, on his way to a photo shoot, the second part of a photo shoot that he was at on Monday as well with Dwayne Wade at a local golf course. And that if it wasn't for the quality of the vehicle, he would be dead. That the front and rear of the car was pretty much destroyed, but somehow it remained intact in the interior, though still ensured those quite horrific injuries. And it's going to be a long road back for Tiger now. He has been in some difficult situations over the past 10, 12 years, ever since he won that US Open on one leg. He was able to come back from that. He had the personal humiliation of what happened in 2009 with his private life. He managed to come back from that. He was in physically the lowest point, as low a point as he probably ever thought he could get to back in 2015, 2016, when he thought he was done. It's reported to have said to Jack Nicklaus at a Masters dinner that I'm done, when he was asked about his back injuries, that he was struggling to get up, that his only real aim was to be able to play with his children, that, swinging a golf club was a long way off at that stage. And we know what happened then. We know that he managed not just to get back, but to pull off one of the greatest comebacks in sporting history by winning the Masters in 2019. What he needs to do now would far surpass that, because at 45 years of age, to come back from this level of injuries, and if you look at the words that have been used in that statement that was released this morning, open fractures affecting both the upper and lower portions of the tibia and fibula bones, stabilized by inserting a rod into the tibia. Additional injuries to the bones of the foot and ankle were stabilized with a combination of screws and pins. Trauma to the muscle and soft tissue of the leg required surgical release of the covering of the muscles. This is a horrific injury, leg injuries that he has suffered, and are going to take him many, many months and years to recover. And as I mentioned, there's nothing in there about his back. A accident that serious with that many rollovers for a player who's already recovering from a back injury, who was saying on Sunday night that he was going to have to undergo an MRI scan in the coming days to see just how that recovery was going. For him to come back now would top absolutely everything. But the name you're going to hear a lot of over the coming days is Ben Hogan, because Ben Hogan, the greatest comeback in golfing history, in 1949, suffers a terrible road accident with his wife, is in a similar situation where he's broken bones all over his body, is in a position at the time where he's told by his doctors he may not walk again, never mind play golf again. And he comes back over the next 3-4 years to win 6 major titles. He wins 3 of them in the same year, and is constantly put up there as this heroic figure of redemption of what he was able to do. And, well, in a quirk, the reason Tiger was in town in LA was for hosting that tournament at Riviera, which is called Hogan's Alley, after Ben Hogan. And maybe there's some inspiration that Tiger can find there. But Ben Hogan was a younger man. He was 37, 38 when that accident happened. On the flip side, modern medicine, strength and conditioning, and what Tiger Woods has gone through all his life maybe gives you a little bit of hope. But right now, you just want to see him back, up walking, aiming to live a semi-normal life, because we've got to be talking a year, 18 months before we could even consider that he might get back in a golf course, if he ever gets back in a golf course.
Yeah, I think it took Hogan just under a year to get back on to the golf course, and they said that he played in pain for the rest of his career. The thing is, as you rightly point out there, is Tiger's been playing with pain for quite some time. It is the exacerbated injuries on top of all of this that is going to be a whole other element to this when we eventually get around to talking about can he get back onto the golf course. It is 7:45 a.m. on this Wednesday morning. There is plenty happening